Hi, I'm Alex Mooney, and today I'm going to break down a song on my own called Struggle and Deliverance. So let's jump right in. It sounds like this. So that's the song right there. 5 minutes of my little version of chaotic madness, organized chaos, basically. What I mean by that is I usually write music in 4/4 most of the time, but for this one, 4/4 was just too boring. The main time signature is 7/8, but there's also 3/8, 3/4, 4/4, 2/4. It changes a lot of time. Basically, there is a pattern. Um, I'll show that pattern here. So as you can see, 7/8, 3/8, 3/4, 7/8 again, 4/4, 7/8, 3/4, 7/8, 2/4, 3/4, 7/8, and that's pretty much the pattern. It's kind of funny that despite all of these syncopation, it still has some sort of groove. It's just kind of hard to find the one, and sometimes you just have a hard time banging your head to it. But that was kind of the point. It was supposed to be unpredictable, and you don't really know where to stand with this. I wanted to be artistic. The inspiration came when I first heard a cue from the movie Aliens, scored by, composed by James Horner. The cue is called Bishop's Countdown. It's at the end of the movie before the explosion where Ripley fights the alien queen. And what really struck me, more than just struck me, but something that stayed with me was the anvil sound in that soundtrack. I love that cue, and that metallic hit just resonated with me and inspired me to create something starting with metallic hits. So this track started with drums and metallic impact. The first thing that came to mind was the Damage library, and also hammers from Spitfire Audio. Most of these libraries are from Spitfire Audio, unless I say otherwise. But basically, it starts with the Damage High Impact. I'll play that. This is the main track where the foundation of the beat. So it starts with that, and some hits are centered. A lot of hits, I pen them hard right and hard left. And also, there's some processing. In the processing, this one image stereo to make it larger, broader, and a little bit of EQ. Shaping, some more EQ. After that, transient shaper. More punch, reduce the sustain so it's tighter. Little radiator, some saturation. So basically that's that. The second track is Exploding Car. It acts like accents, emphasize hits on the first track. So by itself sounds like this. And when you hear them together, like this. So again, just to put some accent on the first one. Then the other one is really something that I like, the Damaged piano. I wish I had a lot of money to buy a lot of pianos and just take a sledgehammer and destroy them and record that process. I mean, poor pianos, but it makes cool sounds. And this is basically what it is. So I'm going to stick to that library and not destroy piano. But listen to how this sounds. I mean, it sounds like it's taken right out of a horror movie. And all three together. So from there, so far we have something that sounds industrial, something that sounds sinister too. So I added more colors and more texture, again with the damaged library, but this time the ethnic woods menu, which sounds like this with a nice reverb. I mean, when you hear all these tracks, the ethnic woods add a different texture and different colors, and it blends really well. And then, of course, to add more punch and accent, some bass drum. First from the Crim library from Bogren Digital, only the kick drum as an accent, and then bass drum from Hammers, 4 players, the two of them together. To get more low end and more punch. But then I wanted something else that reminded me of that cue from Aliens, some snare. This is a snare from Hammer. It sounds military-ish, and it adds a nice little addition. And it's just little. It's just here and there, a bit here, a bit here. So it's not all over the place. It just adds different colors and flavor. The other sound that I added was the rototoms. I love the rototoms from Hammers. Again, 4 players sounds really nice. So that was it. And then the filter snare from Geico. It's Geico, a War Island, a smaller library. It's geared toward industrial EBM. So, as the name says, it's pretty much filter snare. And so the pattern repeats 1 time. This is the 2nd time. The 3rd time, I'm adding extra track. It's the frame drum, the warp loops, again from Hammers. And you have 12 different signals to choose from. So on the left side, I chose signal number 5, which sounds like this. So I copied the programming. And for the right side, I chose signal 1, 6, and 12, which sounds like this. Sounds quite different when you put the two together. Those two are processed. So warp 5 decapitator, and same thing for 1, 6, and 12. Just different setting of the decapitator, but the same idea. Something was lacking though in the drum and percussions, and I wanted more top ends, so I used cymbals from Albion 1. It has a folder loaded with really nice cymbals, and they sound like this. Orchestral cymbals are always nice. Adds a nice quality to it. A little bit of soothe. Just to reduce the harshness. And pretty much if we listen to just the percussive elements, this is what we have. There you go. So patterns plays here, then a second time, then a third time. And apart from different layers and percussions, there are differences in the other tracks while the pattern plays. So for the first time the pattern plays, I'm using samples from the Albion Newest, strings, woodwind, and brass, long moving notes. This sounds like it's coming straight out of a horror movie. Cluster chord. It's lower in the mix, but it fills the ambience. And then I use some samples, reverse them, create risers, added stabs. Here's how they sound. And those stabs and risers go through a different mixing buses, two of them, which I call Max, which we're going to cover later on. Sounds like this. Call Max for maximum power, or maximum saturation. So basically, for the first time pattern plays, we're introducing the rhythmic elements. So just those US samples to add colors. Second time around though, when the patterns arrive, there's some bass. So I started with a Tyrell N6 bass. I slapped Parallax X from Neural DSP on it, and it sounds like this. But just that one alone got kind of lost in the mix, so I added a stock bass from Reason called Bara Braba, stupid name. Stock default settings on that synthesizer bass. Simple, but quite effective, and this one has a little bit of compression on it. So the needle moves a little bit when we hear the two basses together. Also added a third tracks, sample guitar from the Stack Aperture library. Really lower in the mix to give a room sound to the bass. So the bass covers the low end, and then I added cymbalum, a synth that sounds like harp, and harp. Sounds like this. Kind of a bit creepy. It's not much. Just a harp, you know. It's from the BBC SO Discover. There's just something threatening about that one. The choice of notes. Anyways, moving on. The third time, I'm introducing, finally, the guitars. Sounds like this. So it's a guitar in drop D, pitched down an octave lower. Each note were recorded separately and used as samples. So I created a quad tracks of just, different notes. So I programmed the whole thing to make it sounds more mechanical. Sorry. It goes with the industrial sound, and also because I'm lazy, I didn't want to play the whole weird pattern and just to learn it. It was quite easy. Just I have to play a D, then an E flat, then an E, then an F, and then just program the whole thing. In dark gray here, this is the Fortin Nameless X by Neural DSP. So I use the Zool, the grinds, and light gray, still by Neural DSP, and I still use the Zool and grind pedals in front of the third M of the Gojira X, and they all have custom IRs. Something else that I'm adding on the third time the pattern plays, choir. Synth brass pad. And the BBCSO horns. And the three of them creates a nice little pad. When I hear those three, there's a memory that's triggered in my brain, and it's Alien Wars Contra 3 on the Super Nintendo. I don't know why, but it just reminds me of that. And also the third time, I'm adding some bass trombone staccato, some tuba staccato, and some low brass from the Albion IC9. Sounds cold and programmed, but that's what I wanted. Match the cold mechanical industrial sound. So that's it basically for the drum patterns and the colors. Let's look at the drum processing. So a bit of a few plugins. So on the drum bus, I started with a transient shaper. Add them more punch and reduce a bit of the sustain to make it more tight. Then some parallel compression, 48%. Slow attack, kind of medium release, and a 3-to-1 ratio. So I didn't want to compress that much, just a little bit. And to add some glue, SSL bus compressor. Again, I'm not really adding a lot of compression, it's mainly to glue. And of course, I have to use the devil lock. Well, I'm going first with the decapitator for saturation, but the devil lock is the thing to put on drums, and it's only on 2. And even there, the mix knob is kind of halfway there, even if it's on 2, because this is the most evil limiter there is. Just a little drop will totally annihilate everything, so you don't need much. 2, 2, 2, 2. Basically, everything is on 2. A little bit of EQ, kind of subtle. Turn up the drive, more saturation from the drive. And then, again, more drive from Heatwave. I love Heatwave from Steven Slate. Really more, again, I'm pushing it and pushing it. And make it wider. The S1 stereo imager, especially for the main percussive track, which bounces left and right. And I hope you're listening with headphones. And then we go to the middle part of the song, and I introduce something new. That max power thingy, which is layered synth. Basically 7 tracks going through 2 bus compression, 2 bus of effects of processing, I should say. So it sounds like this. So if we're to hear them separately, I get a cinematic pad. In the cinematic pad, I use the distortion, even though the processing also uses distortion. It sounds like this. Ugly, nasty sound, then Geico War Island Cyberhorn bass, sinister sci-fi sound. Then the Apocalypse patch is from the Reason synthesizer. The first one sounds like this. Then I made a copy, changed the setting so it would sound different with discrepancies. So when you hear them together, it creates some depth. And also I added some pitch bend. So that note here all these tracks are playing a low D. But for the pitch, I'm actually hitting the note on C sharp and then bending to a D like this. So when you hear it with the other Apocalypse synth, it sounds like this. I love that effect. So baby C bass trombones. Brass is really nice for that, so some tubas. And from Labs, the foghorn. Now we're gonna check out the processing on all these layers. There's 2 layers. There's max and P1 max, or parallel. Parallel is basically the main, I should say, it's not really the main, but that's the one that's up front. And the other one is more in the background to create more of a 3D image, added some depth. So the P1 sounds like this. And the other one sounds like that. Different processing. So for P1, transient shaper, a lot of punch, cutting on the sustain. And then decapitator and with the punish switch on. So a lot of distortion, the micro shift. So it's wider. And some EQ, a lot of top end, some mids, some lows, everything's pushed, more saturation. Bit of EQ moves. Then little radiator with the bias switch on, more saturation. Then Heat Wave, more drive. And you don't need to turn it all the way. Seriously, it's quite effective at that level, especially layering all this saturation. And then Abbey Road. One of my favorite reverbs. I mean, I cannot use it on every track. It's just for specific effects, but when it's used, it is really useful. For the other channel, FX Rack Decapitator again, with the Echo Boy first. The Echo Boy is at 0 millisecond and 0 feedback, so it's mainly a filter with the decapitator. Not the punish switch isn't turned on. Micro shift again. So all these tracks is kind of the main thing in the middle section. So let's hear a little more at different places. It goes like this. So you can see there's 1 note here, then for a lot of bars, nothing. Then we hear 3, and then we hear a melody. Finally, a melody in the song. The melody repeats, this time on bass trombones, and then some hits. For the hits, I added some stabs, IC&I low brass, some cello and bass from the solo strings library. Sounds like this. And something is introduced. Second time the melody plays, it's played with Abbey Road 1 Mysterious Reed, which is a mix of oboes and clarinets, and also some choir from the Cinematic Epic Choir. Those 2 tracks come up later, and so I'm going to explain them. We'll get to that later on. So basically for this part, there's more percussion, different percussions, It's open. It's different. It's a break from the chaos before the patterns comes a fourth time. Something I should add, it's driven by a pulse, a thump. It's hammers, the bass drum, and I chose the sub mic this time. It's going through the Sound Toys Filter Freak using an envelope, and it might be a bit of a cliche, but I like it. It sounds like a beating heart. Adding some dark impact from the damaged library. And also another library, Hans Zimmer high taikos with some ping pong delay. And with those percussions, some colonial strings from the album Tundra. Those two parts, well, one is band left, one is band right, and they form cluster chords, again with ping pong delay to complement the taikos. So as you can see here, this whole part is driven by the sub. It goes through different phases, stabs, the melodies, and then we go back to the main pattern a fourth and last time. And this time, everything's pretty much there. We have the layered percussion instead, all of them, but the warps, the bass, and the guitar. Some colors with the bass trombone tubas, and then 4 layers out of the 7 to add some chaos. So it sounds like this. So this sounds, tight. But then when we get to this part, this is where the real chaos is. It becomes unfocused. The drums and guitar are doing one thing, the synth is doing another thing, so it's chaotic but organized at the same time. And then we get to the outro, and this is the Deliverance part, the outro. All the rest of the song was the struggle. This part is more ethereal, peaceful. Finally, we're at peace. So it's basically like the last stage of a video game, and you completed the game, and this is the ending. So did the hero survive, or is this deliverance mean that you're dead? Subjective, you decide. So it's basically strings. I got strings from the Crow Hill Company, Volt. It sounds really nice. A little bit of reminiscent of Blade Runner soundtrack. And I made copies of those strings using the Frozen String Library and Frozen and Ice Patch from Albion Tundra. Sounds like this with the Volt. Then I needed some in the lower register. So I did some synth from the Aperture, the stack, and some sub bass. To add a bit of harmony, I used a brass pad from Labs with different notes to complement the strings. All of this create a nice bed, but I wanted a little more movement, so there's some clarinet and some hobos. There's 3 tracks, so one track plays 3 notes, then the other track plays 3 notes, and same for the last one. And they all have delay on it. The BBC clarinet and BBC hobos are pan on each side, so it creates a nice image, and all of three sounds like this. So if we hear everything you have so far in context, without the melody, it would be like this. With the glockenspiel, add a little bit of color. Quite peaceful and ethereal, and then we get to the melody. So the first track, Abbey Road 1, Mysterious Reed, which is a blend of oboe and clarinets, which we heard before, but this is really taking the spotlight. So this one sounds like this. And it's blended with a choir track, which sounds like this. So they're EQ'd and processed to sound similar. And I want the goal is to blend them into one voice. The two of them together sounds like this. Both are processed at the same time in the bus. I'll show you. I call it the storm lead. I don't know why, but that's what it is. So first of all, they're compressed. They're squished together. The wet knob, 71%, bit of drive, fast attack, slow release, 7-1, and turn up the compression. Compress them, try to squish them together so they blend. And then I'm using a tape machine with drive, so they blend even more, and that wasn't enough. So another tape machine with wow and flutter, some tape delay, so they really blend and sound like one. And I wanted some nice reverb on it, so I got this super massive. I dialed a nice long reverb that I like, but it sounds a bit washy, just the reverb on its own. So I added a compressor after the reverb, and it's sidechained to that melody. So the reverb ducks every time there's a note, but then we hear the trail. So we still keep clarity. And I also added the stereo one, S1 stereo imager on the reverb. So the track Storm Lead as a stereo imager too. It's narrow, so the melody is narrow, but the reverb is wide. So you can really hear the difference between the two. Fills the space nicely. And lastly, there's one track for effect. I really wanted to include some sound from the Mercury library, but I already had enough tracks as is. There's about 60, 70, or 80 tracks. I don't really want to count, but so I added this one here. Just a little bit of effect. I don't know why I just wanted some Mercury in there. I had to. It's lower in the mix, but now I can say that it's there. So basically, that's it. That's the whole song. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.